The day my life took in an instant. I believed that I was enjoying myself and trying something new. I just wanted to explore and try new things that my hubby wasn't providing, Getting married while your heart still wants to pursue other things might sometimes be a terrible idea. It's similar to getting married before you're ready to commit. My husband didn't even try to find time for me as his wife because he was so uninterested and preoccupied with his job. He would always be away on business trips or at work, and it would take him months to return. I reasoned that since I was still young and attractive, I should attempt what I had been missing since being married. Since I don't have a great job history, some people may understand what I mean when I say that some behaviors never go away. I would have handled things differently or avoided doing anything that would have damaged my marriage and my reputation if I had known better. How would one respond to my husband's most heinous and degrading act after I had wronged him? How can I get over this? Allow me to explain what transpired. Please give me advice rather than pass judgment. I am a 33-year-old woman and my husband, Dominic, is 40. We met in a cafe where I worked in Los Angeles and on the weekends and holidays. I worked at a strip club. I was just 22 at the time, and I would turn 23 in a few months, if I recall correctly. He had come for a business meeting since he had previously told me that, after working as a building planner and designer, he was still working to expand his architectural practice. We met on a day that wasn't very good for me because I wasn't working at the cafe as much as I would have liked to, but more because of the situation I was in at home. I was raised by a single mother who was also struggling with her own drinking issues because I was the only girl child who had the opportunity to further her education. In order to please her and my younger siblings, I had to act like an adult in order to acquire additional money for my tuition and to provide ideas for how to care for my younger siblings. I worked at a cafe. I therefore missed the opportunity to enjoy my youth and follow in the footsteps of my contemporaries. One day, after expressing to me how much he enjoyed my service, he requested my number and wanted to know if I was working or not. One of my coworkers once informed me that Dominic had visited the cafe while I was away from work and requested to be served by me. He said he would get his coffee at another cafe until I returned after I informed him that I was not working. Note that I had to concentrate on my books because I was in the middle of an exam at the time. He was such a smooth talker and charmer. I went out with him over time. Although he was a very intelligent and business-minded man, I had observed that he didn't tolerate bullshit from others. Later on, I discovered that he was a Capricorn. He was courteous, witty, and business-minded, but he was also incredibly severe and had a very short fuse. He was continuously striving for excellence. I discovered that the hard way, but I had assumed they were kidding when they said, "Never fool a Capricorn because their revenge is always wrathful and cruel." One thing I can suggest is that if you are a Gemini and you are dating a Capricorn, be ready for your relationship to experience significant ups and downs. Both Capricorns and Geminis have short fused periods, but Capricorns are always trying to gain the upper hand. As a Gemini, you must be aware of this and exercise caution, since if you do it incorrectly, you will have added gasoline or paraffin to a fire that is already raging. Ask me, I can talk from experience because I know what it's like to date and even marry a Capricorn while I'm a Gemini. In any case, Dominic was incredibly affectionate and romantic. He knew how to be a queen to a woman. Thus, we kept going out and he lavished me with gifts and affection. I finally started to feel obsessed or possessive of him because I was falling for him more and more each day. I'm not sure if he didn't return my calls or went to a cafe with a lady for one of his meetings, I would become irate. Was the poor guy the object of my possessiveness or obsessiveness? After some time, we began dating. He admitted that he had feelings for me, but I kept rejecting him and chose to be friends with him since I didn't think he would want to date me. I was scared to tell him that I worked as a prostitute and stripper to earn money, other than the fact that I worked at a cafe, which he was aware of since we first met there. I was unable to disclose to him what I did for a living, although I had fallen for the guy. I was doubting myself and felt embarrassed about my second job. We dated for a year before he proposed and we were married. In addition, my mother was doing well. Dominic was looking after my brothers and had helped her get over her alcoholism. He was taking care of me and my family well enough that I didn't need to ask him for anything. However, I was aware that I wasn't sure if I truly loved him or if I only enjoyed the advantages he offered. The man wanted to develop his own empire, which included having children who would take over when he retired or died. And I had graduated before we were married. After a while, I resolved to quit the strip club and concentrate on my new endeavor, which my husband had assisted me in starting. I began a marketing company to advertise or promote my husband's architectural practice, which eventually expanded from promoting my husband's business to promoting larger corporations, being independent and enjoying my own hard-earned money, while knowing that my family was being taken care of was a change that I loved. The realization that your mother has become the person you have always wished for is a breath of fresh air. I had stopped working as a sex worker and stripper since my business was going well. When I started dating Dominic, I quit because, for a few months, his love, care, and affection prevented me from staying at my job. I therefore needed to adjust for both his sake and my own personal development. I used to get regular clients at the strip club who would merely call and ask for my services in exchange for cash. They were obviously very helpful at the time, but I had to delete their contacts and cut off all of our deals when I started dating Dominic and realized it was becoming serious. I didn't want to endanger my first committed relationship. A few months later, I began to feel ill, to the point that my husband became concerned and decided to take me to the doctor, because I was losing weight and didn't have the stamina to even meet his demands. I was anxious about that illness because I was afraid that my husband would cheat, find someone else who would satisfy his desires and have a child, or divorce me because he couldn't handle a sick person but care for me. He stayed and even took a few months off from work. That is something I will be grateful for until the day I die. My blood level was too low and I wasn't eating enough, which the doctor said was dangerous given my condition, so I was admitted. Both my spouse and I were perplexed by the illness the doctor was discussing. He said that we were expecting a child. I was content during my pregnancy, but I adored watching my husband's happiness. He became picky about me after that, making sure I was eating healthily and taking care of myself. I couldn't complain, but he was going too far. In addition to the love he lavished on me, my husband provided me with a solid support network. It was incredibly revitalizing. I'm not entirely sure what went wrong with him in that way. I suppose it was avarice and selfishness. He loved me, you know. Even though our private moments were satisfying to me, I ought to have accepted that. What did I do, too? I deceived him in a way that was extremely painful and harsh. I gave birth to a gorgeous and adorable baby girl a year later. Was I not content? I was overjoyed. Had hoped and desired a son. Thus, a year after the birth of our daughter, he started to distance himself by leaving for work earlier than usual and returning late. He was incredibly in love and supportive during the entire pregnancy journey, so it was devastating to me that our marriage had changed. However, after the baby was born, the more Dominic acted strangely and neglected our daughter and me, the more I couldn't stop thinking about him. I had married a compassionate, romantic, and affectionate husband, but he had changed. He was the one who had been bugging me about establishing his empire, having children of his own, and other things. However, he changed when the baby was born. He also underwent a negative alteration. Even though the child resembled him a lot, he was still unmotivated to treat his child with love and kindness. He treated me as though I had cheated on him or was cheating on him. As time went on, I noticed that Dominic's behavior had not changed. In fact, it was becoming worse every day. It was more than I could handle. I had no idea what. He would claim that there was no issue and that he loved our kid whenever I attempted to talk to him about it. He was acting in a way that contradicted what he was saying. There was not even a slight collision between what he was saying and doing. I brought my child to my mother's home. I was relieved that my mother had completely overcome her alcoholism and was now the mother my siblings and I had always wanted. She showed so much affection to my baby, which was another thing I was grateful for. Telling my mother that I wanted to mend my marriage with Dominic and beg him to understand that he had an opportunity to have a kid, even if she wasn't what he had expected. I left my newborn girl for a whole 2 months. She was still, however, his child, his lifeblood. I think he recognized something in me that I didn't, however. His behavior was so different, extra polite and rather aloof, that it was difficult to discern. Additionally, he started asking me questions, not direct questions, but ones that made me laugh. How did the event go? Have you seen anyone you might like? You're certain you don't need me to take you home from work? It doesn't bother me. I sensed him moving further away, and his words and demeanor were more cheerful or non-serious. About 3 months into our relationship, Mike waited until one evening to surprise me with a romantic dinner at home. He prepared my favorite dinner, lit candles, and uncorked a bottle of wine we had saved for the occasion. I looked into his eyes and felt guilty as he added, I had the feeling that we've both been super busy lately. I just want to reconnect. He smiled warmly and poured me a drink. I was slipping behind his back while he was trying. Mark could not be dismissed so easily, even though I had vowed not to stay with him. He beckoned me back when I told him we had to stop. His charm, his assurances, the way I felt like the center of his universe. Even as I clung tenaciously to the flimsy hope that Mike was unaware of. The affair went on. I was unaware that Mike had been silently collecting evidence while observing me the entire time. After reading the messages and keeping track of the late-night meetings, he had pieced together all of my lies. He waited patiently for me to come up with his revenge. But instead of addressing me, he just let me dig deeper. Then, one day, everything began to fall apart. Little things like an unanswered email, a postponed business meeting, or a client who abruptly decided not to participate were the first signs to extend his contract. I didn't give it much thought at first, but then things started to go wrong. Coworkers inexplicably took over projects that I had worked so hard on. Soon, rumors about my lack of professionalism started to circulate. At home, Mike was even more somber than before. He would give me a forehead kiss, advise me to look after myself, and then watch me go downhill as he secretly relished the mayhem he had caused, unbeknownst to me at the time. He was manipulating the situation behind the scenes by utilizing evidence of my affair to methodically destroy the life I had built. I arrived at the party a bit too late to understand what was going on. One day, my employer summoned me to her office to discuss concerns about my behavior outside of work. It wasn't until she shoved her phone across the desk that I understood what she was talking about. A picture of Mark and me, smiling and with our arms around each other, was displayed on the screen. We were too close to be mistaken for just friends. The blood was dripping from my face, she said, her tone harsh but her face emotionless. This was sent to me anonymously. I struggled to explain, but she didn't seem to get it. You have to understand what this looks like. After saying, we have professionalism here, don't give me an excuse to question yours anymore, she waved me out as I left her office. I felt weak in my knees. It must have been Mike. Mike acted as though nothing had changed at home. When I got home, he still gave me a smile, a cheek kiss, and a question about my day. However, he had a coldness in his eyes that had not been there before. I made an effort to ignore my paranoia by telling myself that I was just dreaming. But the financial issues soon surfaced. I discovered one of our joint accounts had been depleted one evening. When I went to pay a bill online, Mike reassured me that he had just transferred some funds for a private investment. When I called him in a panic, I countered that money was for our savings. It's still our money, he declared, grinning menacingly. Don't worry about it. I noticed additional changes in the weeks that followed. All of a sudden, credit cards that I had previously used with easy ease would no longer be accepted. Inexplicably, subscriptions were terminated. My gym membership was also abruptly terminated, even though it felt like the walls were closing in. Mike didn't notice his eventual confrontation with me, albeit not in the manner I had anticipated, was the genuine gut hit. After another secret meeting with Mark, I came home one evening to find Mike waiting for me in the living room. He seemed to know everything, and he did. As evidenced by the icy expression in his eyes, I became nervous and trembled as he opened his laptop and displayed a folder called The Truth. I believed I would keep it a secret forever. But secrets cannot be kept forever. I was trying to think of a way out, but there was none. I had to deal with the fallout from my actions. His words, sit down. My heart pounded as I obeyed, the voice uncannily calm. My stomach fell when he opened the folder. There were pictures, screenshots of my emails to Mark, screenshots of our texts, and even timestamps of our meeting. Mike responded, I know everything, in a voice that even alarmed me. For months, I've been aware that the ground beneath my feet was shaking, I thought. I might pass out, but I didn't. Actually, I wished I would at that precise moment in order to prevent myself from hearing and seeing what I was about to do. I had nowhere to go. He held up his hand to silence me just as I opened my mouth to speak. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to hide, but I was unable to do so. There was nothing I could do to stop my world from collapsing. He knew for a long time, but he was planning a methodical and thorough retaliation because he wanted me to feel the same way he did. I considered confronting you right then and there, he continued. But then I realized you deserve better than just a breakup. You deserve to feel the weight of every lie you told me. Every second you treated me like a fool. He had carefully considered his retaliation. I merely stared at him, my throat dry. Save it, he yelled, losing his composure for a moment. Mike, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if he was correct. Perhaps he was because I wasn't stopping the affair with Mark. You're not sorry for cheating on me. You're sorry you got caught. We were too far gone already. The next several weeks felt like a nightmare as he leaned back and stared at me. So here's how this is going to work. We're done. I have already filed for divorce. Mike enjoyed destroying my life. My friends, family, and co-workers were among the many people who learned about my affair. The folks who had respected me suddenly gave me a disgusted look. Mike had the support of my parents, who had always adored him. The rumors spread like wildfire throughout the office. The picture of me and Mark that had been on my boss's desk started to circulate around the office. I was forced to leave before I would have been fired, and my reputation was in ruins. And as soon as the fallout began, Mark, the man I had sacrificed everything for, disappeared. His excuses grew more frequent and his communications more aloof until he eventually stopped communicating with me completely. He had never given a damn about me, and I had discovered this too late. I was merely something fleeting, something unimportant, something that diverted his attention. I had nothing left over when the divorce was finalized. He even took the car, the savings, and the house. I hardly had enough money to start over after signing the prenuptial agreement years ago. Without hesitation, the emptiness he left behind and the knowledge that I had gradually destroyed my own life, for nothing at all, were worse than the things he took away from me. I now live alone in a little apartment and gaze out at the surrounding quiet. Every day, I relive the choices that brought me to this point and how foolish I could have been. Mike's retaliation wasn't really about his goal in stealing from me was to make me realize how much I had lost. And he was successful. I'm trying to forgive myself someday while leading a chaotic existence. Samantha, you have my undying love. Update. Hi everyone. I'm back because I believe you all should be aware of my story's latest developments. Actually, not much has changed in life, as everyone is aware. Mike and I had many acquaintances in common, and I occasionally ran into him at gatherings to which we were both invited. The good news is that I continue to receive invitations to gatherings. I have not been cut off by everyone. The most significant individuals had, to be honest, distanced themselves from me. But at least some people remained, and my social life was not entirely ruined. The point is that each time I met Mike, I made an effort to approach him and engage in conversation in the hopes that we may develop a relationship and accomplish something together. He was my true love, even though I caused him a lot of pain and he ruined my life. I am aware that you may argue that I wouldn't have cheated on him if he had been my true love. But sometimes things happen and we simply lose touch. At this point, I was unable to stop thinking about him and suppressing my guilt. It was at a birthday dinner for one of our friends, Rachel, that I first saw him after the divorce. I wasn't sure whether I could see him, much less in public, so I nearly skipped the trip. I wanted to demonstrate to the world and to myself that I wasn't completely defeated. I made the decision to go at last, and my heart fell when I walked in. Mike was already there, laughing with a group of pals. And he seemed more at ease than I had seen him in a long time. He appeared content and liberated. We looked at each other for a moment, and I gave him a shy little smile instead of returning the smile. He just carried on talking and laughing as if I didn't exist. For him, I was nothing at all. The remainder of that night was agony. Every time I attempted to be in a group, the tension would shift, people avoided eye contact, conversations grew awkward, and the once effortless laughter became strained. On the other hand, Mike seemed to thrive while I sat quietly in the corner, sipping a glass of wine and wishing I could just vanish. He was funny, charming, and had the loudest laugh. I apologized for what I had done and attempted to start a discussion with him. He simply stepped away from me without saying anything. He gave me absolutely no thought. I decided to attempt chatting to him when I went to a cookout at another mutual friend's house a few months later. I stupidly hoped that perhaps I might find a way to apologize, to explain, to, I don't know, make apologies, because I couldn't keep pushing the weight of what I'd done aside. He was flipping burgers and chatting casually with someone nearby. When I spotted him by the grill by himself, I plucked up the courage to approach him. "Mike," I uttered quietly, my voice quivering in my throat. "Can we have a little conversation?" His face was unreadable as he stared at me. When I asked him if he would agree, he shook his head, calm yet courteous. He added, "I don't think we have anything to talk about, and not anymore," I said. "Please," my voice cracking. He gazed at me for a few moments, and I thought I saw a flash of something, possibly anger or sadness, but as soon as I saw it, it vanished. "I just want to apologize, guys. I know there's nothing I can do to go back and change what I did, but I need you to know I'm so sorry." "Finally, I don't need your apology," he added. His words struck me like a slap. "I needed your honesty and your loyalty when it counted, and you couldn't give me that." My mouth opened to respond, but he was staring back at the grill as though I didn't exist. I gave up trying after that. Whenever I had to see him at an event, I stayed on the periphery and saw him laughing and talking casually, seemingly unfazed by the destruction he had caused to my life. Mutual friends had informed me that he had started dating again. It was nothing serious, but it was enough to give me a sudden, intense jealousy attack. He seemed to be moving on and starting a new life without me, while I was left stranded in the ruins of the one I had destroyed. Every day, those exchanges served as a reminder of what I had lost, and the love I had given up for something so fleeting and pointless. The ghost of my betrayal followed me everywhere I went, and no matter how much I rebuilt, it would never go away. I didn't even have the opportunity to speak with him, much less have more. So, yes, I was saddened by revenge. He ruined my social life, my job, and my financial status. My social life was also affected by Mike's retaliation. He was supported by the majority of our friends, the majority of whom had actually been my first. They accepted his account. Why wouldn't they? The receipts, the evidence of my betrayal, were in his possession. It was like entering a courthouse, to be silently charged at every function I had to attend. As I got closer, people would move away, and their conversations would become quieter. Some people just stopped talking to me, removing me from their lives. I didn't even get an embrace from my family. My parents were upset by what I had done since they had loved Mike. In addition to calling less frequently, my mother's voice was clipped and critical when she did. She once said to me, "You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it." His retaliation was having a long-lasting impact on my life, and I was lonely as hell. When Mark realized what was happening with my spouse, he vanished. He didn't want to take part in this massive act of retaliation. My health was also impacted by his retaliation. My health suffered as a result of the extreme stress. I started to lose weight because I couldn't eat, not because I was trying. Dark bags under my eyes became permanent, and my hair began to thin. The toughest times were at night. I used to spend hours lying awake, replaying every second of my affair and every lie I had ever spoken. All the choices that had led me to this point. My chest began to feel anxious, and despair quickly followed. I was unable to afford therapy, so I suffered alone and slid further and further into despair. "Oh, I must tell you something else as well." He wrote a reminder of what I had thrown away and sent a photo of the two of us from our wedding to my apartment when I attempted to speak with him. Additionally, he began telling people that I was having trouble organizing my life and that I wasn't a good companion to anyone. When he noticed that some people were still inviting me to their parties, the reminders of the life he was leading without me also came into play. He started dating someone else who was all the things I wasn't: kind, devoted, and well-respected. Then, while I sat by myself in my dim apartment looking through pictures of a life I could have had and didn't ruin, I noticed people posting pictures of themselves looking content and smiling. Folks, this was my story. Mike's retaliation was systematic, patient, and devastating. It was neither loud nor theatrical. He made sure I felt the weight of my treachery in every part of my being. In addition to punishing me for it, I am now tormented by the life I destroyed and live in the aftermath of my choices. I am reminded of my possessions and losses every day, and the hardest part, I am aware that I am deserving. I appreciate everyone who has read my tale. Again, don't be too critical of me. Again, thank you so much, Samantha.